Let's take a look under the hood and make Photoshop work just for you. One note, a difference between the Mac and Windows environment is when you set your preferences on that platform, that under Photoshop Preferences, and we will start with General. So if you are on Windows, go to Edit, Preferences, General. In the General settings, one of the things I'd love to turn on the zoom with scroll wheel. Once that is clicked on and I hit OK, I can go to my zoom tool and use my wheel low or wheel down to zoom in or out. If I am back on my move tool, it still works. So any tool you are on of Photoshop, now the wheel on your mouse will instantly react to you. And if I come up here, it's smart enough to know to zoom to that top of the wing instead of the middle, the photo. Or if I move over to the hand and wheel up, now I get the little fingers. The second preference, I am going to change Preferences, Interface, or on the Windows Edit Preferences, Interface. Adobe made a radical change to the Photoshop out-of-the-box interface, and now you have the option for a very dark UI, the Medium Dark User Interface, or UI, the light or absolute lightest. So, if you really miss the older interface and you don't enjoy working in the dark, then quickly and easily change your appearance to the lightest. The second thing you may want to customize is your user interface font size. At home, I work on a 30-inch monitor, so my resolution is super high, and often that can make the panel names over here difficult to see. Especially since I do a lot of online training, I like to set my user interface font size to medium. That way, when I say the name of the panel, they are much easier to see if I am broadcasting and recording my screen lifes. It does warn me that I have to quit Photoshop for the user interface font size to change, so I will click OK. I will go to Photoshop, Quick Photoshop, or on the PC file, Exit or Quit Photoshop, and then I will simply launch Photoshop again. Once I have launched Photoshop again, now I have my light interface, and now all of these panel names are bigger than they were previously. Let's take a look at a few other settings. Back to Photoshop Preferences, File Handling on the Mac, or Edit Preferences, File Handling on Windows. These two are worth their weight in gold. If you deal with in warmest images, the Save dialog can be up for minutes every day. Now, automatically saved in background is turned on by the wonderful engineers of Adobe. Saving background will let this file save quickly and allow you to continue to work. These two features do some very advanced caching of your RAM memory and hard drive space in order to accomplish this. The second feature that I would have paid extra for years ago is automatically save recovery information. An auto recovery file is always made for every image you are working on, whether you had given their name or not. And if you lock up, this information will come right back where you left it, depending on the interval you set it to. I find 5 minutes is most useful. Even if you lose power, it will bring up files you were working on. And once this is set to 5 minutes, that's the most time you will ever lose. Finally, in this dialog, instead of asking me every single time if I'd like my Photoshop documents to be backward compatible with earlier versions, you can choose Maximize PSD and PSB, which are the larger or embedded Photoshop files. Maximize their compatibility always, so it never asks me again. When placing Photoshop documents into Illustrator or InDesign, it helps to have that on. They gain a good color preview, those programs preferred. If you use only Photoshop and you are sending your PSD files out to anyone else, you can actually set that C to never, and your file sizes will get slightly smaller. Actually, it could be 20 to 40% smaller if you use things like smart filters. Making them backward compatible write to enough information so that new features can be still translated to older versions of Photoshop, although you may not be able to edit those features like smart filters, which were added a few versions ago. In either case, I always set this to always because I don't like to answer to dialogues where I already know it's doing the right thing. Make this backward compatible so if I send the PSD for somebody with CS5 or CS4, yes, do that all the time. Don't ask me every time. The next preference setting I will take a look at is in performance. I have 8 GB of RAM on this machine and I do heavy Photoshop work, so I often like to allocate 80% of my available RAM to Photoshop. Also, history states are your multiple undo lose, and 20 is simply not forgiving enough if you do a lot of painting or coloring, so I dialed my history states up to 40 or 50. That's my preferred settings. You can actually go up to 1,000 undos, provided you have sufficient RAM. And the last thing I will show you, I want to show you before and after. So I will click OK, and I will go to my filter menu, and you will notice that seems like there are fewer filters. In fact, let me open an image so that you can see this. I will pop down to Mini Bridge, and I will open this photo with a double click. This is from my lesson to folder in the assets. I hit Command 0 or Control 0 so that it fits in window, and if I look at the filter menu, Browse Filters Online comes down to about the shoulder blade. If I go back to Photoshop Preferences, Plugins, or Edit Preferences, Plugins, I can tell it to show all filter gallery groups and names in the filter menu. So when you click OK, now on the Filter Browse Filters Online, you didn't lose any filters. All Adobe did was remove the redundant ones. Most of these filters led directly to the filter gallery, and if I am going to lead to the filter gallery anyway, and you could play with them there or turn them on there is business need to take up valuable screen territory which filters that show up in the filter gallery. So out of the box, under Photoshop Preferences, Plugins, or on the PC Edit Preferences Plugins is the redundant filter names are removed. This checkbox is off. If you missed them, you could turn it back on. I will click OK, and of those are most of the useful preferences that I change before I even begin working in Photoshop. I hope you have picked up a useful tip or two on how to customize Photoshop interface as if Adobe wrote it just for you.